Hello and welcome everyone. We're super excited that you've joined us today. We have a very special edition of a video program we call DevOps Unbound. My name is Mitch Ashley. I am CTO with Techstrong Group, who puts on these webinars. We also host Techstrong TV as well as DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and digitalcxo.com. Thank you for joining us today. Just a few housekeeping items and then we'll get to our panel. We are recording the webinar today, so all attendees will receive a link, an email with a link in it following the webinar. So you can view the recording again, you can share it with others, etc. And happy to do that with you. Also, we love to engage with folks through the chat feature of this platform. So I'd love to hear, first of all, where you're from. Jump onto the public chat, type in, hey, joining you from Nashville, just like one of our folks did. Thanks for jumping in there. All right, and so we'll be able to take questions and have some dialogue in that. The panel will kind of go its way, and there'll be some folks that'll jump in on the Q&A feature as well. So ask your questions, and we'll be happy to see if we can get to some of those things. So we're also at the end of today's webinar going to be giving away 3 gift cards. So I'll announce those in the chat as we're kind of getting things close to wrapping up with our panel. So pay attention, look for that, stick around, and hopefully you're one of the winners. So let's get things underway. And I am going to turn things over to Alan Schimmel, who is our host.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel. Welcome to a special edition of DevOps Unbound Live Roundtable. I am your host, CEO of Techstrong Group, people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and I have the pleasure of hosting DevOps Unbound, our regular video program, which is sponsored by the good folks of Tricentis. And today's special edition is truly that. It is a special edition. We've got a great panel for you. I'm going to introduce them in just a moment, but let me jump into our topic for today. The title of today's topic is Creating Positive Digital Experiences Through Testing. And it really, what I hope is that we're going to delve into just how important testing is to the success of our digital transformations. Because at the end of the day, the tester kind of represents they stand in the shoes of the customer, and the customer is still the most important person in the equation. We're going to dive further into that. Let me introduce you to our panel, though, to start our dive. First, because he's the top of my screen here, I want to introduce you to my friend Brian Dawson. Brian, welcome back to DevOps Unbound.
Hello, thank you.
Brian, if you don't mind, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
So I've spent about 30 years, as hard it is to say that number, in software development and delivery. I'm excited about this conversation because it gives me more of an opportunity to tap into what I'm proud of, and that's that in those 30 years, I've had the privilege of serving as an individual contributor as well as a leader in practically every phase of software development and delivery, from development to marketing, go-to-market strategy, pre-sales, post-sales, and of course, quality assurance. And I hold a special place in my heart for the role that quality and testing plays. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely, and we're excited to have you here. Next up, I want to introduce Adam. Adam, I don't have the last name in front of me, so I'd like you might as well do it before I mess it up.
Oh, sure, no worries. Adam Sutterfield. It's nice to see everyone again. I know I have a lot of friends across the Tricentis world here. So I cut my teeth in testing thanks to the infamous Y2K bug. So I've been kind of going ever since. And really excited for this conversation. I've worked with and currently work with a lot of amazing testers who have do a lot of really awesome work, have a lot of great stories to tell. So hoping to be able to talk about that work.
Y2K bug. Yep. That brings me back. Last but not least, she's a newly installed fellow from IVM. So let's give her a round of applause for that. It's my good friend. She's an author. She's a mainframe expert, security. my friend Rosalind Radcliffe. Hey, Rosalind, I didn't say everything, though. You got to introduce yourself.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here again. And thank you. I'm very happy to have recently been appointed IBM Fellow. In my career, I have done just about everything as well, except direct sales and management. That's one really nice thing about being in IBM in a technical career path. And so I've had that opportunity to do lots of things. You shouldn't mention Y2K, though, because I spent what I call 9 months of Y2K interesting state. So there are lots of stories to tell in that Y2K testing days. But I've actually spent time early in my career in human factors, in user-centered design and testing from a user perspective. And I think in this DevOps transformation and all the clients I work with, testing is what we have to automate and have to have in order to move faster with high quality. Testing is absolutely key and a critical part of this. And that's why I wrote Enterprise Bug Busting, because testing is a key piece of this transformation.
Absolutely is. Let me introduce you to the last person on our panel today. He's certainly not the least. He's my co-host on DevOps Unbound, as well as a business partner and friend for 20 years, Mitchell Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm good to be here, of course, co-hosting with you, CTO of Techstrong Group, and also principal at Techstrong Research, our analyst firm. Some of my favorite people in the world on our panel today. And one of the things I'm most excited about is I have this suspicion that Brian is going to talk about gaming. So I'm hanging out. I'm hanging for that. You got me on the edge of my chair, Brian.
Right. Nice. And I will.
Well, okay. We got it out there. So let's jump into this, though. You know, look, one of the first lessons I learned about testing when I really started talking to real live testers was that testers are not failed developers, junior developers. Testing is not a way station on the way to becoming a developer. It is for some, right? Some people do go through that progression. But it's not, testers are not second-class citizens. In many cases, the products that we end up with, the end product in our applications and stuff, is directly in the hands, the quality, the success of it is really as much in the hands of the testers as it is the developers, right? And it's high time testers get treated and recognized for that. But Adam, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask you to kick off here about this and talk about, how is it that testers are really the closest thing to customer experience that we have?
Yeah, sure. So not only are testers really the kind of final line or last line in that chain before the software gets over to the customer, testers are really your experts on how the product works, right? They're your last line risk analyst. I always like to think of testers as your problem solvers, your the folks that love puzzles, critical thinking. So they're really in there trying to figure out the way things work, and ultimately, while I know a lot of testers who enjoy finding bugs and breaking things, ultimately they like having a really nice working product, and they work really hard. A lot of them work, late nights, they work weekends on releases, really driving to make sure that the customer is very happy with what they get. And oftentimes, they're finding things that aren't thought about, during user experience or requirements. And they're essentially becoming that customer to say, hey, this works, but it doesn't work the way that maybe the customers would like for it to work. And they're able to provide that feedback. And, they really do drive to, wanting to have the best product possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And panel, as always, feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts one way or the other with what someone else says. Another big thing in my mind, though, is the breadth and width of tests. We use the word testers. I don't even know if that's a good word to use anymore, right? Because there's testing, there's a world, a universe of different testing, right? Think about what testing was, let's say when Rosalind and Adam, you guys are working on Y2K stuff, right? And what testing was that? To all of the infinite variety of testing that we see today, right? We have people who, I forget what it's called, but it's, visual testing, right? So what we see there. We have accessibility testing. We have security testing, obviously. We have load testing, unit testing, right? Is it really fair to just lump these all together and say, oh yeah, that's testers, that's testing?
Rosalind, let me
No.
hear you're shaking your head. Yeah.
No, so I make a statement and I got to be a little careful. Everybody becomes a developer or whatever. Software engineers, we're all engineers. There's not a class of engineer and a class of that. We're all software engineers. We're all building, at least in the software case, we're all building software. We're all doing this. And whether or not our primary focus area is user experience, or our primary focus area is performance, or it is some area, we're all engineers. And it is important to recognize we're all engineers. We're all part of the product development team. We have our own specialties. I don't like the term full stack developer, partially for the reality that it doesn't exist.
Adam remembers that from last week. Sorry, Rosalind.
Sorry. We need full stack teams. We need people who have these skills. And when I was early in my career, and I didn't know if I said it, but it's like 35 years for me, so a little while, I did user experience testing. We actually got real developers sitting behind, real people, not developers, real people sitting behind a glass wall, watching them try to use our product to get the kind of feedback to understand what we could do better. We have people who do the role, making sure, but they're all part of this process. Everybody's part of this process. And we have to recognize that they're all critical pieces of this process. Now, one of the reasons testers get a bad name is because sometimes the testers really aren't testers. Sometimes they're business analysts that got thrown into a job doing manual testing, and maybe they aren't engineers, and maybe that's not what they really want to do, and maybe that's not their life. But if you look at the rest of us, we need to focus on this idea that it's an engineering profession, and it's really important. And performance and scalability and user experience are very important skills that we need people to have to make sure we deliver appropriately.
Yeah,
I agree. Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Adam. After you.
Thanks. Yeah. So I really agree with that. And I think, Alan, too, one of the things you mentioned is the width of different types of testing. I think that, it creates a lot of excitement in the industry because, you can kind of come in as, coming out of college or switching over careers, maybe from support into testing and say, hey, I want to get into the testing field. Then you look and see, there's, dozens of different, avenues and things you can learn. And so it kind of helps you to not get stagnant in your career when you can always look and say, hey, there's this new awesome thing that I can learn. And it creates a lot of excitement for folks. And I really think that width helps with a lot of growth in the industry as well.
Yeah. Fair.
And I absolutely like to underscore first, Rosalind. Last week, we had a panel where I declared I hate the term full stack developer. So that's why you heard me respond. And I think in talking about that, you land on an important concept that we need to do it better at addressing in the industry. And that's that we need full stack teams. We have to respect domain expertise. And we have to respect that everybody on the team has a role to play. However, in speaking, I think about I met a number of people here actually doing a keynote at a QA Symphony Quality Jam years ago. And a number of discussions that came about me talking about DevOps in that setting was from QA leads that said, yeah, I'm really behind DevOps, but you know what? My organization started a transformation and they didn't even bother to involve us. And now we're working to deliver on sprints, but nobody's accounting for QA's time. And that starts to lead into one of the things I've seen sort of plague the industry and the relationship between development and QA for a long time. And at times it's exasperated in this pursuit of speed in modern software development and delivery. And that's, to your point, Alan, QA is often treated as a second-class citizen. An annoyance, an unnecessary requirement, not as well, informed as us developers. My brother is a QA leader at GoPro. And one of the things he's talked about, as well as other QA leaders I've talked to, is that one of their primary missions is to ensure that their team gets a voice and they're comfortable and understand that they are as valuable as any deeply experienced developer. And it's actually their duty to speak up as the domain expert when it comes to customer experience and quality. So I love this discussion. Rosalind, Adam, I love the points that y'all are bringing to the table.
There's an important part of the voice to have, and that's the voice of the customer, right? The customer can be employee, partner, external customer, paying customer, et cetera. And I think that's it's easy to get into the middle of the software creation process and have the intent of what we want to have happen. And there's always those, we never expected anybody to do that with our software.
Right.
Well, of course, because you're the person who created it. You don't always think of those things. Right. So it's interesting that the QA, the testing role, is now also being seen as a place where customer experience is brought back in, or maybe it starts in from the beginning. By the way, the only industry that agrees what full stack is the restaurant industry. At IHOP, 5 pancakes is a full stack. So we can give the term back to them, Brian, if you're okay.
I think it's really important, and one of the problems I think QA has, I'm going to cause maybe a discussion argument in this one, is that they're separate and they really shouldn't be separate. I'm not going to cause an argument. Having them as the QA team over there is exactly the wrong thing to be doing. They need to be part of this product team from the very beginning, because I need to be writing my tests, my test automation, while I'm writing my development, so that they are together. And one of the biggest problems with many companies' agile transformations is they threw out everything but the development piece.
Yes.
And they forgot everything else. And so you ended up with Scrum fall, as I call it. Yes. You had the development teams doing Scrum and you fall into QA. It doesn't work. We got to bring everybody together and recognize that they're part of the very beginning to make sure that you've got the right experience, that you can automate what you're doing. I remember in one of our experiences having test, and I got to be careful because they're engineers. They're just engineers, right, but they were responsible for making sure it worked. Those engineers made a bunch of comments in the early development phases to make it easier to test. Because if we had better APIs, it's easier to test than it is to test the user experience. And the other thing I've always said is I love automated testing. Everything should be automated except the user experience. And can we please have a human who actually might know what they're doing test it, not a developer in this case?
Yeah. Well, no, developers are humans too. Let's be fair. Today, anyway, for the foreseeable future,
okay,
you may get full stack at IHOP, but those developers, they still got heartbeats and blood pressure and all that stuff.
But they may not be doing the end experience.
They don't, right. Well, they sometimes get
lost in the trees for the forest. But here's an interesting thing, right? So when I first started DevOps.com, seriously, no kidding around, there was a point of view that said DevOps signaled the end of the QA role. We were going to get rid of all the testers. They were going to retire from being obsolete at 35, right? And you better find something else to do. Poppycock, right? Obviously, we sit here now and laugh about it as much as we do about the Y2K bugs. But nevertheless, it was a prevalent thought back then. And the way I see it is this. When it comes to testing, anyone who tells you we can automate all testing is full of beans in my mind, right? And I think another lesson we've learned with testing is we automate what should be automated, but just because we can automate it doesn't mean we should automate it, right? There are just some things, Rosalind, as you said, customer experience. You can automate that and have AI, ML, ET, whoever you want doing it, but they really don't take the place of a person, of a real live person. And right, so there's one school of thought that says, hey, testers in this new DevOps digital transformation world, they should just be spending all their time automating as much as they can. I'm not, okay. There's another school of thought that says, look, automate as much as you can, but our best testers should then be doing higher value things that can't be automated, right? And so spend their time on that. And I propose a third level over that our best testers should be taking the results of automated testing as well as, you want to call it manual testing, and instead of just reporting test results, doing some analysis on those test results and making suggestions for how do we improve the software. So it's not enough to say it failed this. But if we did that, it would be so much better usable, right? And if you're going to be a professional tester, to me, like Rosalind, you're a fellow at IBM. If we're going to have that highest level fellow tester fellow, right? They've got to provide, that's their, beyond just reporting test results, it's that analysis and recommendation that makes them worth their weight in platinum or whatever is expensive these days, gasoline, I don't know. But, that to me is what it's about.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think I would add to that I believe that automation enables creativity. Right. So when you're able to automate the things that are monotonous or the things that need to be run every single time, it frees up your testers and your DevOps engineers and your developers to focus on, innovation, right? To focus on potentially areas of the application that are very difficult to automate. Because I hear this right now with AI. AI is going to replace testers. I hear that all the time. It's like, well, it should be enhancing testers, right? It gives them another tool in their toolbox. But, that's one of the things I tell my teams is that, let's focus on automation. So you're free to, focus your, attention elsewhere, right? So you can really grow. And one of the things that my team has done right now that I'm very proud of is they've built in accessibility to the automation testing framework because they had automated some things and they were saying, okay, well, what's next? Well, we have this whole sector of users that really could, benefit from better accessibility on the website. So they built that into the framework. So that was innovation that was born out of automation. And I think that's truly where it's at.
Yeah, and Alan, I have to deliver on Mitch's prediction that I was going to talk about games, and so you gave me the perfect, segue. So I actually started my career in prior to programming in quality assurance, and I spent a number of years doing quality assurance for games. And by the way, we use the term tester there, but I actually love Rosalind's case for using the term engineer. A smart guy I know recommended that we call them digital experience engineers to talk about really kind of the spread and full stack there. I agree. But I hark back to games and there were things that we needed to fix that as I moved into the tools and technology space, I focused on fixing. There were some things that I really appreciated about the relationship between quality assurance engineers in gaming and the devs. And that's that they were considered gaming experts and user experience experts. So in addition to doing regression testing, right, going through test skips to find bugs, they did two other really important things. Just kind of free roaming exploratory testing, push the edges of the software, try to use it in ways that a developer would never anticipate and ensure it was stable. But then also they would actually give feedback on the user experience. It's too hard to, to beat this level. This is going to discourage users and they'll fail to play the game. And they would regularly report that feedback to the development team, and they became the developers' partners. They became the producers' partners in, as Mitch raised, in engineering the digital experience for the game players. And I would like to see that better codified in our test team structures and relationships today.
It really is important that free-form, malicious, whatever the words you want to use, testing really, I remember when I was part of a team, I had a bad habit of having a system that I snapshotted so I could keep doing it, but I grew it over the years. So I evolved it, I upgraded it, whatever. I would find problems in that system no one else would find, because automated testing, I install new, I install fresh. Right. I had a thing that had been upgraded through 17 versions or whatever it was by that point in time. Well, mine was customer-like. Yeah. And that was the point. It was customer-like testing. And I would freeform do things and break things. And now it's in the environment. Now you have to fix it, but you have to fix it so that you can fix it in the customer environment. It's that kind of thing that we need manual testing of. It's not I can test the API. I think 100% API testing, I should be able to get all the negative conditions, the boundary conditions, all that early kind of low level stuff, automate it and free up the time for this complex scenarios that are just a lot harder to deal with and take a lot more time, take a lot more effort, and you're never going to manage to automate that anyway. So let's allow that free form, that malicious, that trying to figure out those security problems, making sure we're doing security testing appropriately, trying to break the system, all of those things that we really need people to use their brain power to do.
And just to share, to accent that point, Rosalind, back when Alan and I co-founded Still Secure, we spent a lot of time in front of customers. And whenever someone would report like some weird edge condition, a product's doing something strange, rarely happened, of course, Alan. But,
only on Mitchell's engineering team, but I won't go there.
That's a whole nother problem. The first person I would always go to is Hang. And Hang was the person who was the lead QA person. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever tried this? Is that something we were aware of? Because I'd have to go to 6 developers to ask that question to get an answer. But I could go to the person who's tried it or not. And there's so much creativity in the role of testing. I know we tend to think of it as, like Alan said, it's the people who can't develop. Well, testers write a lot of code, by the way, so forget that. There's so much creativity. And what I love is this conversation it is about the customer experience. At the end of the day, when should the product work like this or like that? Yeah, the product person has their view of it. What makes sense from the customer? What makes sense from the person who's got to use this product and wants to achieve something with it? And that was Hank. That was what he did on our team.
It's a good man, Hank. So let me go a step further here with that, right? And I'll hark back to our Still Secure days with Mitchell. I think when we look at the role of the developers are given a requirement stock, right? These are the features we want, and go write code for that to make those features alive, and the thing. I do think, Brian, it's not just games. It's every app that comes out. It's that tester who has to think like a user. I don't think developers think like users. They're people, they're humans, but they don't think like users. They think like, look, these are my requirements and this is what I got to develop. They don't think about how is someone really going to use this?
Well, and if I may, just to interrupt to defend developers,
No,
you say,
go.
look, they are humans, and many of them are very good at thinking like users. But where we talk about where full stack breaks is sometimes you need people wholly focused on a given domain. So it just happens to be the perspective they focus on day to day doesn't necessarily allow them to spend as much time focusing on the user perspective, right? So income people that own that experience, right? Or at least are similar to a security expert, are ensuring that the whole team is thinking about that, including developers. Sorry to interrupt, Alan.
No, don't interrupt.
I think you're dead on to it, because I'm going to tell you something else I've learned. I mean, look, Tricentis, we work with them a lot here on DevOps Unbound and other places. We work with other testing companies in the space. An interesting thing I've learned. Do you know how many users of testing services, testing providers, like a Tricentis, wind up their customers, and then they wind up going to work for the testing company? Adam, I don't know if that's in your case, but and that happens an awful lot. You'll talk to people who said, I was a customer of this company and I loved it, and I went to work there, right? Because at the end of the day, look, it's something I do here at Techstrong. I try to tell my people, if you don't have domain expertise around DevOps or cybersecurity or cloud native, I don't care how well you know Twitter, I don't care what kind of great writer you are, right? You're going to have a really hard time keeping up with what we're doing, right? And getting traction, because you got to have that domain expertise. So I find that in testing more than other disciplines within this full stack continuum we live in, right? And we all get assimilated to. Testers, if you have people who've been there, done that, walked and talked that walk, and now come in as testers, they bring an awful lot of expertise that makes them better testers. And I wonder how many people out here today watching this have followed that path to testing, right? Whether it's in games or it's in security is another perfect example. You can have the greatest developers in the world. You're going to sit here and tell me how I should filter out vulnerabilities, or what's a real alert versus a not, what is my daily kind of SOC kind of, protocols and stuff. If you haven't done that stuff, forget about it. You could be the greatest developer in the world, but you don't know diddly about security.
And it's go, Rosalind.
That is actually the real critical point of this. We're telling developers that they have to be experts in everything, and they can't be. So my last role, I help teams build developer tools. So they're developers. They know what the user experience should be. They're developers. Yeah, but they're not developers of COBOL applications. They're developers of development tooling. So I still need somebody to get that other perspective. Security is every developer's responsibility, but that doesn't mean they can do it all. So we need to have those specialists, those experts who are going to have that view into that world, because no one person can know it all. We can't do that. We focus in our area. If my job is to write that function, I'm going to write that function the best I can, but I need those other people around me to make sure that it's secure and it meets the user's goals and all of the other criteria.
And I think in a lot of situations and organizations, that falls in the tester's range, right? In the tester's kind of lap. They've got to be able. They've got the testing, the automated testing regimen, the manual, whatever all of it has to have that goal in mind. And I wonder how many testing teams are really looking at it with that as their goal, right? Versus finishing off a checklist of tests that need to be done, versus the bigger goal of, is this product rocking it? Is this product doing what the customer wants it to do. And I think that's got to be the goal.
Start
Yeah,
with the end in mind, right? Stephen
I think
Covey.
you have to incentivize, right? One of the things we could do is start to land on KPIs, metrics, and measurements that kind of capture that. So we incentivize QA with more than number of automated scripts written, number of defects found, and what is the sticky time? We have a web application. What's the dwell time on a web page? What's the distribution of click-throughs? What's our bounce rate? Right? Let's start to capture those metrics that give an indication of positive user experience and incentivize our teams with those.
Yeah, Brian, if I could add to that as well, I think, as leaders, really need to focus on metrics that don't antagonize the individual teams against one another, right? So we shouldn't be measuring, defects, against, individual, lines of code or areas, right? We need to focus on team-based metrics, right? How is our delivery, right? How are we, are we impacting the customer? Are we making a net positive or net negative change, right, in our customer experience? And that I think it would drive a lot of that, tester not as a second class, citizen, but tester as a true core member of the team. And I think that a lot of that falls on the leadership shoulders, not only from, that metric standpoint, but also, fostering that, deep knowledge and giving testers the time to, innovate and to really kind of drive and, look at new automation tools and things. So I think there's a big component, right, for leaders really, stepping up and helping to make sure that, the testers can, be the best that they can be.
I don't know if there's a case for actually changing the title to digital experience engineer, but if you overlay Agile and DevOps into our process that we do now, it's a crime if we're doing testing at the end and not all the way through the process. But that could be part of that experience that we are validating, because it's when we've already got software built, we've got it in different environments that we're doing QA or performing those functions on it. That's what comes out of it isn't just bugs, but also are we creating the right user experience, the digital experience, or multiple of them, depending on the product. So when we get to the end, we've got the best. It doesn't become the best at the end when we got all the bugs fixed. It's designed in front, just like we designed in security up front, just like we want to design quality, we design user experience, a great digital experience.
Fair.
Yeah, now
Guys,
just real quick,
Go, Brian.
that I love what you capture. Digital experience is end to end, not a point in time. But what are our users' experience from the first time they hear about our software to the first time they engage it to the last time that they engage it? I love DEEs, digital experience engineers. Great idea.
I love DEEs. All right, that sounds like a button we should be giving, or a sticker at our net when we're not virtual. Well, we could do them in virtual as well. Guys, speaking of virtual, we're coming up on our end game here. End time. Well, that sounds bad. It's not end times. We're coming up on our time limit for today's panel. But first of all, I want to really thanks to everyone who's watching this on the Tricentis Virtual Summit, right? And but there's one I think for EMEA and one for North America or West and East. I think between them, it's thousands of folks watching this, and they're primarily and overwhelmingly interested in testing. So first of all, many thanks for Tricentis for giving us this opportunity to address the audience. But I'd like to ask each of you now to talk directly to our audience, and these are the testers. These are people who are involved in testing in so many of the different facets of it. What advice can you give them, right, to raise, if we're going to be digital experience engineers, what's your best advice to them to get, to the promised land here? Rosalind, I'm going to ask you to kick off, then we'll do Brian, then Adam, and then Mitchell, and we'll wrap up.
So take your seat at the table. It's not DevOps, it's DevSec, QA, Inf, Ops, or whatever set of letters I left out. You're part of the team. You're there from the beginning, and make sure you're really participating and that you take the role as making sure you're automating those things that should be automating and driving that digital experience. So the user experience is what it should be.
Love it.
Yep. I guess me next. I actually have agreed with 100% of everything Rosalind said, so I'll just add a little bit. Look, take your seat at the table, and we could be DJWs, Digital Justice Warriors, right? It's important that you're there to kind of defend the right and experience of users. But I would also say, as we all should as team members collaborating, take a more empathetic approach. You don't have to be a developer, but do meet the developer halfway. Understand what their experience is, engage as a team member. And again, whether it's DEEs or digital justice warriors, we should take some role of that on. We need you to have a seat at the table.
Love it. Can't go wrong agreeing with Rosalind. She's a fellow.
No, I know. It's easy. Just what she said. Yeah.
Yeah. Adam, how about you?
Yeah, I would say always keep learning. It's a big world out there in the realm of technology, and I'm a big believer that if you need passion in order to truly succeed at your work and to succeed in innovation. So don't give up. There's so many things, so many awesome things to learn. So just keep going forward.
Absolutely, I love it. Mitch, I'm going to give you the last word.
I'll add, believe it or not, it's not just about quality. You can have the highest quality product that it's still a bad product that isn't successful. But if you shoot high for the digital experience, for the customer experience, and shoot high, whether it's, think of the analog of that waiter who always remembers that you like sweet tea, or when you go to the shop, they know you buy Mac software, not Windows software, buy whatever version, whatever it is, whatever the experience is that you go, that is amazing. I wish that was everywhere. That's what you want people to think for your product, for your software. Shoot that as your goal. Shoot high.
Aim high. Absolutely. Hey, we're going to wrap it right here. I want to thank Tricentis. I want to thank everyone who's attending the Tricentis Virtual Summit for joining us today on this special edition of DevOps Unbound. There's a full agenda of great sessions on here, so don't make this the only session you watch. Check them all out. Do watch us on DevOps Unbound every other week on Techstrong TV, once a month, live roundtables. Rosalind, Brian, Adam, Mitchell, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your summit, everyone. Have a great day.
Hey, everybody. Thank you again, as Alan said, for joining us for today's live roundtable. DevOps Unbound is part of a video series on Techstrong TV, techstrongtv.com, and appears twice monthly. We have new content every day. And as Alan mentioned, we often do events like the Tricentis events. This week, we're also doing some live streaming from the Open Source Summit in Austin, which is a Linux Foundation event. So we combine some live streaming with interviews, panels, things like that. And there's always new content up on techstrong.tv almost every week. I'd like to again thank our panelists today on behalf of Alan and myself, to Rosalind Radcliffe from IBM, Adam Satterfield from Tricentis, and Brian Dawson from Ripple. The great folks. I mean, it was just a fantastic conversation, and I can tell from your thank yous and your engagement that it was valuable to you too. So I hope you do well, be well, and shoot high, aim high for those digital experiences, and enjoy being part of the QA element of our environment, how we create software. It's never been more important, and frankly, Techstrong research that I work with has data to validate this, that the testing role and function is not a kind of back office left behind thing anymore. It's senior leadership is looking to the QA function as part of the DevOps and Agile process of creating software, and putting a lot of trust and reliance in what we have to say. So congratulations on getting and being at the table. And we look forward to you joining us at another Techstrong event, either a DevOps.com webinar or Techstrong TV, or any of our virtual conferences that we have. Thank you again for joining us today. Be well.